Yet another video in the GTI. Today I kind of want to go over a couple of things like how reliable is the Stage 1 Plus GTI? And we'll do it with Stage 2 once we get there. But how reliable is it? I get this question all the time through comments. I kind of want to talk about it. You know, like obviously I think if you scroll down you see all the videos I've made, you kind of know like what I've done to this car and the things I've done. I'll go over them a little bit here and there in this video one more time just to let people know. But how reliable is it based on my driving, you know? And I would say that the car is pretty reliable. I mean, with the spark plugs and the coil packs from ECS Tuning and the NGK9 spark plugs, I heard some mixed reviews about it, that, you know, they've burned all the way through, you can't get them out, ruined your motor, not great. I've heard that they're great, they're awesome, they do their best, really good for a tuned GTI, you know, things like that. And when I went Stage 1 Plus, which if you guys don't know, I have the ECU Stage 1 IE tune, and then I have the DSG IE tune to go with it as well. And I'm on 93 pump gas as well. So with that, with this car, with the exhaust, with an APR intake, with the CTS turbo throttle pipe, kind of with everything that I have, with the CTS inlet, everything mashing together pretty well. I haven't had any issues. I haven't had any lights pop up on the dash. I drive the car hard, but I don't drive it too hard. You know what I mean? I think, you know, naturally driving it, I drive it in drive. Every once in a while, I'll throw it in sequential and just have a little bit of fun. But for the most part, I don't go crazy on it. I kind of saw GTI pass me. You always got to do the peace sign. But yeah, I don't really go crazy on it. I think if I drove this thing in sequential all day long, every day, you might see some problems. I have 72,000 miles, so you know, problems could be arising at some point, but I'm in a lot of Facebook groups with the GTIs, and I don't see a lot of problems till about 150,000 miles. So I'd say this car is pretty reliable when it comes to tuning it. Just make sure you're doing all the tuning right. When you tune your car yourself, make sure you have a battery charger. Just the little mini things like that will help your car stay healthy and reliable without having any major issues. You know, I think if you drive it a lot, you know, just go easy on it every once in a while. This car doesn't need to be driven to the ground every single time you drive it. I think, you know, driving it respectively here and there will definitely help. You know, just kind of driving it casually and, you know, not beating on it every second. And then every once in a while, if you want to have a little bit of fun, sure. I mean, it's your own car. You do what you want. I'm just saying for reliability purposes, you know, that's kind of what I've done. You know, I kind of haven't driven it too hard, and I don't overthink it. I just naturally don't. Like right now, I'm just driving it in drive. I'm in sport, but I'm in drive, and I'm just casually driving. I'm cruising. I'm not doing anything overly excessive. But sometimes I'll be leaving like a store or something, and I just put it in sequential, and I rip it for that whole drive home. You know, like there's been times I've come from dealerships doing videos. I've been like an hour away from home, and I took back roads, and I've ripped it all the way home 30, 40 miles. It's not gonna hurt it. It's what the car's meant to do. I'm tuned. I paid the money to do it. You got to do it. That's just, you know, something that I do though, is I kind of just go hand in hand with it. Now I think what it all comes down to is, you know, not just how you drive it, but it's how you build it too. You got to build it right. You know, you got to pay attention to the mods you're putting on. You got to tighten everything, you got to torque everything down, make sure you're doing everything correctly, and just treat your car well. You know, I mean, I always treat it well. I do all my maintenance on time, although I did just miss my last maintenance by like 1,000 miles. That was a hiccup. I was on the cruise and I just missed it. But for the most part, I've done it 1,000 miles before or just that. And I don't wait 10,000, I'll wait 6,000. So the first couple times I waited 10,000, then I went to 6,000. Kind of one of those things where it's like, you know, do your maintenance. Don't drive the car as hard every single second. You know, it's not a GT3 RS. If there's one thing I want to say on reliability is the suspension. This DCC suspension really gets clunky and makes a lot of weird noises as it gets a little bit older. It's 7 years old with 72,000 miles on it, but it sounds like it has about 150,000 miles on it. That's what the Passat was like. So when I owned the Passat had like 160,000 miles on it, and it was super clunky. So I got rid of it. Obviously, I lowered the car, and it was even worse from that point forward. But it was fine because I just wanted to lower the car. But the suspension on the Passat wasn't a DCC, it wasn't a sports suspension or anything. It was just a regular shocks and struts. It wasn't anything special. And that car lasted up until then. This car at 72,000 miles sounds just like the Passat did, and it has, you know, 80,000 miles less than when that started going out. So I'm just saying, you know, it's a little interesting. I will say the clunky suspension in this car, very interesting. I'm not a fan of it. The DCC isn't as great as I thought it was going to be. Definitely a powerful suspension. but it doesn't really hold its value when it comes down to it. I mean, 72,000 miles and the thing sounds creaky and clunky. Like, I don't know. I don't think I would have expected that. It's a little weird, but there's nothing I can really do about it unless I, you know, put springs on it or something, and even then it might make it worse. I've heard in forums and groups that it could make it worse. So that's kind of another reason why I haven't lowered this car, and as you know, I was planning on it, I just never did. But yeah, I just think there's a lot of components to this car, and there's a lot of things that I really like about it, and there's a lot of things I don't like. You know, I have, you know, obviously a lot of opinions on it, and it's a great car, great starter car, great daily car. I think when you start modifying it, I think it can be, you can definitely raise some questions about the way the performance is. You know, putting, you know, $4 to $6 grand into it and it doesn't perform as well as you may think it would, that definitely stinks. But as far as the reliability goes, as long as you put the right parts in it, meaning, like, you know, don't cheap out on everything, put some decent parts in it, make sure it's installed correctly, double, triple, quadruple check everything, make sure you did everything right, test it out, make sure I always start the car, let it run for a few minutes, check if there's any leaks. I never leave without making sure everything is tightened down and okay. And then in the video, as you guys know, I always take it for a drive. I always go and we test it out, whatever it is. We take it for a drive, we rip it and we test it out. I test its limits to make sure whatever I'm putting on it is good, and I see what it does. And doing things like that kind of help, you know, show the dependability of the car and what, you know, how much this car can handle. Because all things considered, this car can really, on an IS20 turbo, only handle up to 400 and I think it's 20 or 30 horsepower, I believe. And then you need a new turbo. You need a bigger turbo. So in this car right now on Stage 1 Plus has about, I would say, 320, 330. So it's already getting closer to that point it can reach. So Stage 2, when we do that next month, it's going to be very, very close to that point that IS20 can handle. So now that's where the reliability of the IS20 turbo comes in. Because the reliability of everything else, you know, water pump, the actual parts themselves that I put on, and other components like injectors, right, fuel, oil, no leakages, no nothing. When it comes down to that, that's all pretty reliable so far. We've had no issues, no check engine light, no oil light, no kind of, you know, strange consumption lights, nothing that is ruining the performance of this car. But when it comes down to it, what is Stage 2 gonna do with that turbo? That's the one thing we don't know, and I think that's the one thing we're gonna test out, is when we do Stage 2, we're gonna be hitting close to that point where you're forcing it, and that turbo is gonna have a lot more pressure, and it's gonna be interesting. I mean, we'll find out. What I will say, when I first did the ECU tune, I didn't do the TCU tune. So I was basically, although I did put it on low torque file, which is always smart, by the way. If you're not gonna do the transmission tune right away, just make sure when you tune it, just put it on a low torque file. It's just safer for your transmission and your motor and everything. It's a smart idea. And then you can switch it up to high torque once you do the transmission tune. That's exactly what I did when I switched it. Just didn't want to do the whole package. I was kind of skeptical about what a TCU tune would do, so I didn't do it. But when I did the TCU tune, it made a hell of a difference when it came to shifting. And that was the most important. Was it faster? I wouldn't say necessarily. But was it more aggressive? Oh my God, it was awesome. It was really jolty, and it shifted so crisp. Before it was skeptical. Even on low torque file, the car, it was weird. It was a Stage 1 tune, low torque file, making 297 or 305 horsepower or something like that. And it didn't feel like it was making any more power at all. I didn't really feel a difference in the power band until I did a transmission tune and then changed the low torque Stage 1 to a high torque Stage 1. That's when I was like, oh, this car now feels tuned. Because before, it absolutely did not feel tuned. And I don't know what it was very strange, but it just did not feel tuned. But very happy I eventually went with it, because it did not feel right without it. I probably would have ran into some random issues if I didn't do it, regardless. I just think with all the modifications and everything that I had, I think I just needed to do a transmission tune no matter what. I don't know, it just felt safer to do it, to spend the extra $600 and do it that way, rather than not doing it. And it's funny because I have a friend that has a Mark 6 GTI, and he did a Stage 1 tune. He actually did a Stage 2 tune without a DSG tune, but he also did a Stage 1 tune. Basically did the whole stages without Stage 3. He did the Stage 1 and Stage 2 without the TCU tune, and his DSG gearbox completely shit the bed. It's gone. It was gone. So he ended up swapping it to a Mark 6 Golf R manual transmission, which is actually pretty cool. But still, it was completely shot. So no matter what, I think at any point it is definitely safe and smart to go with the TCU tune. But reliability on the transmission's been awesome too. I mean, not just talk about the motor and the other parts, just the transmission itself. You know, it's under a lot more load than it used to be before when it comes to more torque and more horsepower. And the transmission tune really helped kind of mitigate that, you know what I mean? It really helped like signify that this car basically settled into the power that the car had, and it has been butter smooth. I haven't had any mis-shifting, any weird shifting. Nothing's been delayed. The lag has been a little bit less, which is nice. I'm hoping stage 2 completely erases that, but we'll find out. When I had the Passat, I mean, I didn't start having problems in that car until 150,000 miles. And the problems weren't even that major. I had a small electrical issue with the purge valve, the solenoid, which was weird because there was nothing we could do to get rid of it. And I had a shop even solder new wires together, and that didn't work. And very interesting. That was a weird thing. And then my blend door went on the Passat, so I had to get new heat. I had no heat. That was weird. Other than that, besides the clunky suspension, and then right before I sold it, one of the catalytic converters was clogged, so that had to be replaced. But for the most part, I never had any real deal issues. It was all just routine maintenance. It was brakes, it was sway bar links, making sure, I mean, burning oil. I was obviously burning oil, but the car was 10 years old at the time, and I'd been driving it so much. So, you know, as long as you topped it off with oil once or twice a month, you were fine. It didn't cost that much money to do so, so it was okay. So you could see at 150,000 miles, the car had some kind of issues. But it wasn't to a point where it was like, take all my money out of my pocket and I had nothing. I mean, the car was still reliable. It still drove down the road, you know? If you were going on a road trip, just make sure you got some oil in the back seat, right? That's all I really needed. And other than that, we were good. So, I mean, when it comes down to things like that, I mean, Volkswagens are pretty reliable. As long as you treat them pretty well and you don't overdrive them to a point, I mean, they're pretty solid cars. Now, can I speak for other German vehicles? Not really. You know, I've heard BMW is tough. Audi's pretty decent because obviously it's built by Volkswagen, so, you know, you get that kind of rep, which is good. But problem is, depending on the area you live in, if you can't fix the stuff yourself, it's going to cost you a good amount of money to fix it. You know, I got lucky with my Volkswagen because the Passat wasn't really that bad. When it came to the things that went on it, it didn't take a lot to replace it. I didn't need specific German parts to replace it. I didn't need specific things. If something specific had broken on it or had gone, you know, that would have been probably different. It probably would have been a little bit harder for me to get parts for it. Probably would have been a little bit more expensive for a shop to order it or me to order it. Probably would have had to get directly from Germany because the car was 10 years old. If probably wouldn't have been on the Volkswagen parts website. So it would have been one of those things where it probably would have been more difficult. But so far with this car, it has been pretty damn reliable, and I really can't complain. I'm really happy with it. That's kind of the one thing, you know, is am I happy and excited for a new build? Yeah, sure, but am I at least happy that this build has treated me well? Very. This build has treated me so well. The parts have been easy to find, great. I've had so many options, so it's like I'm sitting in front of the computer and it's taken me hours on end, sometimes days on end, to figure out what part I want to buy. So this car, the parts have been overall somewhat easy to install, and it has been able to be a pretty keen project. You know, I feel like it's been a pleasure and it's been fun. You know, I think there was nothing really about it that was a pain. There was nothing about it that I really couldn't stand. You know, I say that now, and then the downpipe is going to be the worst part of the entire project, which, you know, it probably will be. But, you know, that's kind of the last piece of the puzzle, I'd say. And then I got a couple more videos to make on it. You know, it's not completely done yet. I'm going to make a couple of videos. We're going to do a couple, like, stage 2 videos and stuff. Just kind of, like, comparing it to stage 1, comparing it to maybe, like, a Golf R. And we're just going to be doing a couple of, like, you know, comparisons, couple of videos like that. Been an exciting build, but that's just a little insight on kind of, like, the dependability in this car that at least I've experienced. I can't vouch for anybody else who potentially have had issues. Obviously, what I've done to this car, there's no guarantee that if you do it, you'll have the same outcome with no problems. You never know. There's just a couple of tips and a couple of things to let you know, because I've seen a lot of questions. You guys have been asking me a lot. How's the dependability? How's the car been since you did the stage 1 tune? How's it been since the intake and the exhaust? So, you know, I want to answer those questions for you guys. I want to let you know that the car has actually been nothing but perfect. And I guess I just got lucky with it. I don't know, but I'm glad that it is perfect, because God Lord, the last thing I want to do is have to fix this car while also trying to modify it. So that's different. If I was buying a project car, which we will be getting at some point, we're gonna be getting a project car and fully building it from the ground up. That's different, like rebuilding it. So that's fine. I don't care if I have any problems with, you know, fixing things and on top of modifying. This car I bought as a daily car, a car that was already kind of, you know, in perfect condition. I just wanted to build upon it. And I'm gonna do that with the next car too, but we do have another car that's gonna come in. That's gonna be just a full build. And that I'm kind of excited about. That's gonna be a blast. But yeah, that's gonna be the end of today's video, boys. Thank you as always for watching. We have some more content coming as soon as possible. I'm actually out to go make another video right now, so you're gonna see that video coming out shortly. And then we're gonna be making another one coming up shortly too. And boys, we will see you in the next one. Peace out.